Welcome to the deep dive. We are really excited you're joining us today because we are looking into something totally fascinating.
Oh, absolutely. It's one of those stories that just, it really grabs you.
Right. So I want you to imagine starting a rock band, but you decide to just ban the one instrument that tells everyone in the audience how to move.
Yeah, the rhythmic anchor.
Exactly. No snare drum, no cracking backbeat at all. Just raw, screaming, analog guitar noise, a heavily distorted bass, and a kick drum pounding away in the dark.
Which, I mean, on paper, sounds like a recipe for a total train wreck.
Oh, completely. But in 1994, in the absolute geographic isolation of Hobart, Tasmania, a band did exactly this. They kicked the foundation right out from under the music, and somehow the whole structure stayed standing.
It's really the absolute definition of an artistic high-wire act.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Because when you look at the mechanics of how underground music scenes actually evolve,
Yeah.
it's rarely because someone bought the best equipment or, moved to the biggest city.
Hey, it's usually the opposite.
Exactly. It is almost always a story of severe constraints. And this band, Sea Scouts, they are just a perfect case study in how being completely cut off from the global pop machine forces you to invent a totally idiosyncratic sonic language.
Yeah.
Just to survive, really.
So our mission today is to track exactly how that language was built, right? How it broke down and how it mutated.
Because if you're looking to discover hidden gems, or if you want to understand the life cycle of pure, unadulterated noise rock, this is the blueprint.
It really is. So let's drop right into Hobart, 1994. A musician named Tim Evans has just seen his former band, Mouth, fall apart.
Which is always a tough spot for a musician.
Yeah, but instead of packing it in, he starts jamming with Zach von Bomberger. And Zach had been the frontman for another local outfit called UFO.
Which, amazingly, stood for Unlimited Friendly Objective.
I love that name so much. But anyway, right out of the gate, they are a two-piece. They are fusing these thick, rough analog guitar noises with what they called hidden melodies.
Hidden melodies, yeah.
And their rhythm section at this point, it's literally just a mechanical drum machine.
Which immediately sets up this very specific visceral tension. I mean, think about what happens when you combine raw, unpredictable analog guitar feedback with the rigid, unfeeling pulse of a drum machine.
It's a clash.
A total sonic war zone. It's the organic, messy chaos of a human being fighting against the perfect mathematical timing of a machine.
Right.
And it requires a massive amount of physical energy from the musicians to make a two-piece setup feel full and commanding in a live room. You have to fill all that empty sonic space with sheer frequency and, well, attitude.
And their very first artifact as a duo perfectly captures that DIY messy ethos. They put out an EP called $100,000 Mammal.
With Mammal intentionally misspelled.
Yes, exactly. Just the one M. But the physical release itself is what fascinates me here. It was a polycarbonate-only pressing.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Now, for anyone listening who's used to just streaming music or even buying standard vinyl, a polycarbonate record sounds like something out of a science experiment.
Well, it essentially is. Because standard vinyl records, they're pressed in a factory using a metal master stamp. It's an industrial, relatively pristine process.
Yeah, it's uniform.
Exactly. But polycarbonate records, on the other hand, are often lathe-cut. This means someone is literally using a cutting needle to carve the audio grooves directly into a sheet of plastic.
Like by hand.
Sometimes one by one, in real time. It is significantly cheaper, incredibly DIY, and crucially, it sounds physically rougher.
Oh, I bet.
The audio fidelity is way lower, and the record itself degrades faster the more you play it. It is basically audio brutality in physical form.
That is wild. But it perfectly mirrored their live shows, right?
Yeah.
Because those early gigs were pure chaos. They were sharing vocal duties, wrestling with feedback, and just writing these incredibly heavy, repetitive loops.
Yeah, building that house without blueprints.
Exactly. But here is where the story takes a massive left turn. Shortly after that polycarbonate EP drops, they realize they want a human element back in the rhythm section. So they bring in a drummer named Monica Fickrell. And when she joins Sea Scouts, she plays her entire kit with a complete absence of a snare drum.
Which fundamentally breaks the rules of modern music.
It really does.
I mean, to understand why this matters, you have to look at the anatomy of a rock song. The snare drum, That sharp, high-frequency crack that usually hits on beats 2 and 4, it's the backbone of Western popular music.
Oh, it's the backbeat.
Right. It is the punctuation mark at the end of every musical sentence. It's what tells your body to nod its head.
Exactly. The snare cuts through the low-end rumble of the bass and the mid-range wash of the guitars. It's the beacon.
Precisely. So to deliberately remove it isn't just a quirky stylistic choice. It is stubborn. It's disobedient, really.
Yeah, contumelious is the word that comes to mind.
Exactly. Without the sharp attack of the snare, the low-end rumble and the high-end feedback just swirl together. It creates this massive, minimal, but surprisingly dense wall of sound.
But mechanically speaking, what does that actually do to you as a listener? Like, if you are standing in a sweaty club in Hobart and the backbeat is just gone, what are you actually listening to?
Well, you are forced to listen actively rather than passively. Your brain naturally wants that snare crack.
We're conditioned for it.
Exactly. So when you deny the brain that resolution, it starts frantically searching the rest of the sonic landscape for structure. Taking away the snare forces the listener to dive under the distortion.
To find those hidden melodies.
Yes, you have to focus on the driving pulse of the bass or those hidden melodies buried inside the guitar noise. The melody suddenly has to do all the heavy lifting to propel the song forward.
It is a brilliant, totally counterintuitive constraint, but there is a fatal flaw in relying entirely on sheer force of will to hold your music together.
It's exhausting.
It is physically and creatively exhausting. The initial burst of energy sustains them for a few months. They do a short, punishing tour of the Australian mainland, but then Fickrell leaves the band. And about 6 months later, the entire project folds.
It just burns out.
Yeah, it burns out.
Which is really the classic life cycle of these intense experimental projects. When you build a sound based entirely on provocation and tension, it naturally has a very short half-life.
But, a truly weird idea rarely stays dead.
That's very true.
We had a conceptual pivot point in roughly 1996. Tim Evans decides he has to reboot the band. So he brings in a bassist named Alex Pope.
Okay, so a new lineup.
Yep. And then initially, they revert right back to the original blueprint. Just the two of them writing new material and reinterpreting the old songs over a drum machine again.
Back to the machine.
Right. But then they recruit a new drummer, Andy Hazel, who used to play in UFO with Zach.
Yeah.
And when Andy Hazel sits down at the kit, he brings the snare drum and the hi-hat back into the mix.
Oh, wow. That is a massive shift in their sonic architecture.
Okay, wait, I have to push back hard on this. When I saw this in the sources, I immediately thought, doesn't that completely ruin the experiment?
How do you mean?
Well, they built this entire identity around being the weird, snareless noise band that defies the rules of rhythm. Adding a snare and a hi-hat back in, doesn't that just mean they gave up? It sounds to me like they smoothed out their edges just to become a standard rock band and get more gigs.
I completely understand why it looks like a capitulation on the surface. But if you look at the mechanics of how a band survives past its first year, this isn't a sellout. It's a necessary evolution.
Really? A necessary evolution?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The Snareless setup was a fantastic grenade to throw into the local scene, but it was also a severe boundary. You can only write so many songs within that specific void before you start repeating yourself.
Okay, that's fair.
By bringing the snare back, they didn't become a standard rock band. I mean, they still sounded incredibly abrasive. But they expanded their canvas. They gave themselves the structural foundation they needed to build a taller, more complex building, so to speak.
So they needed a new vessel for the noise.
Exactly. If they were going to survive and grow, they had to adapt the vessel.
And it seems that structural evolution kept rolling, because Hazel's tenure is actually really brief. Later in 1996, he's replaced by Sarah May Libero on drums.
Oh, right.
And she continues a fascinating trend the band had. She plays the drums standing up. She's explicitly compared to Mo Tucker from the Velvet Underground in the source material.
Which changes the entire physicality of the music.
How so?
Well, think about the mechanics of drumming. When a drummer is sitting down, they are using their ankles and wrists to play complex, subdivided patterns. But when a drummer is standing up, everything changes.
It's more full body.
It is primal. You are using your entire body weight to strike a floor tom and a snare. You aren't executing rapid-fire drum fills. You are hammering out a hypnotic, driving, tribal rhythm.
Oh man, that visual, just standing there hammering away.
It visually and sonically perfectly complements that thick wall of analog guitar noise. It turns the rhythm section into an anvil.
I love that. So with this reinforced lineup, Evans, Pope, and Libero, they finally lock in and record their first full-length album in 1997. It's called Pattern Recognition.
A great title, too.
Yeah. And the way they recorded this is basically a masterclass in the 1990s DIY underground ethos. They recorded the entire thing on a 4-track cassette recorder. And the label, Chapter Music, released it exclusively on vinyl.
Which, again, fundamentally shapes what the listener ultimately hears. A 4-track cassette recorder is exactly what it sounds like. You only have 4 distinct lanes of audio to work with.
Right, which sounds impossible for a full band. If you have drums, bass, vocals, and 2 guitar parts, you are already out of lanes.
Exactly. So bands had to bounce tracks. You'd record the drums and bass on tracks 1 and 2, then mix them together and bounce them onto track 3 just to free up space.
That sounds incredibly stressful.
It is. And every time you bounce analog tape, the audio quality degrades. You get more tape hiss. You lose high-end clarity.
So it literally gets grittier.
It does. But more importantly, it forces permanent creative commitments. Once you mix those drums and bass together, you can never unmix them. You can't fix a slight mistake later. You are committing to the raw performance.
Wow. And then releasing it exclusively on vinyl amplifies that commitment for the audience, doesn't it?
Oh, for sure.
Because vinyl demands an active listening experience. You can't just hit shuffle and walk into the other room. You have to physically drop the needle, listen to the sequence exactly as the band intended, and then physically flip the record over to hear the rest.
Right. You are actively engaging with the physical artifact. It creates an intimacy between the band and the listener that digital formats often lack.
Well, speaking of digital formats, that collision is about to happen because right around 1997 and 1998, this highly localized Tasmanian sound starts breaking out of its geographic bubble.
They start touring more, right?
Yeah, Sea Scouts are touring the major mainland cities like Melbourne and Sydney, and they aren't just playing tiny dive bars anymore. They are landing massive support slots for major international indie acts. We're talking Pavement in 1997, Archers of Loaf in 1998.
Which is the ultimate stress test for an underground band.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, when you are opening for a band like Pavement, who were essentially indie rock royalty at the time, you are stepping onto a massive stage in front of thousands of people who did not pay to see you.
Right, they're just waiting for the headliner.
Exactly. It tests whether that localized abrasive Hobart noise can actually translate to a cavernous room and win over a skeptical crowd.
And during this crucible, the lineup shifts yet again. Sarah Malibero leaves, and their original Snareless drummer, Monica Fickrell, rejoins the group to jam a newer set of songs.
Full circle.
Totally. They are gearing up for their second album, Beacon of Hope, which they record in 1998 for Unstable Ape Records. But there is a detail from these recording sessions that is just brilliant.
Exactly.
While recording the new album, they deliberately went back and re-recorded their first album, Pattern Recognition, and their stated goal for this re-recording was to make a version that was intentionally cleaner.
Oh, right.
They used the exact phrase. They wanted it to be less scabby, specifically for a CD release.
Less scabby is such an incredibly evocative phrase. I love that.
So good.
And it perfectly captures the massive technological tension that underground bands faced in the late 90s, the format wars.
Okay, break that down for me. Why did moving to CD force them to change how they played their own songs?
Because the medium dictates the message. Think about cassette tapes and vinyl. They have a natural noise floor. They have tape compression and vinyl warmth.
Right.
That warmth acts like a sonic glue. It masks slight mistakes. It blends harsh frequencies together. A raw, abrasive noise rock band sounds right at home there because the medium itself is slightly dirty.
It's forgiving in a way.
Exactly. But a compact disc, a CD, is binary. It is ones and zeros. It has a massive dynamic range and pristine digital clarity.
So if your guitar sounds like a dying lawnmower, the CD is going to replicate that dying lawnmower with terrifying microscopic precision.
Exactly. It exposes every single frequency. It strips away the protective dirt of the analog tape. So re-recording your songs to be less scabby is a literal mechanical smoothing over of your abrasive origins to survive the audio demands of a new, unforgiving format.
That makes so much sense. Think about any time you've had a wild, chaotic, brilliant idea, but you have to present it to your boss at a corporate meeting. If you go in there screaming and throwing paint, they'll kick you out.
Right. You have to adapt it.
So what do? You put it in a PowerPoint presentation, you smooth the edges, you make it less scabby so the wider audience can actually digest it.
That is exactly what Sea Scouts were facing.
And the translation worked. By 1999, they are operating on an international scale. They put out a 7-inch record on a Californian label called Zoom. The two tracks are Word as a Weapon and Destroy Your Local McDonald's.
Great titles.
Yeah, and amazingly, they were re-recordings of two songs from the band's very first incarnation back in 1994.
It really shows how cyclical the creative process is. You start with this chaotic foundation, you evolve, you learn how to translate your sound for bigger rooms and clearer formats.
Right.
And once you have that platform, you reach right back to your rawest beginnings and ship them to California.
And their physical reach matched their sonic reach. In 1999, Sea Scouts embarked on a massive tour of North America and Europe. They even joined an Australian band called 99 for a string of shows in Eastern Europe.
Wow.
Going from jamming with a drum machine in Hobart to hauling gear around Eastern Europe is a staggering trajectory.
It really is.
Mm.
But the problem with operating at that level of intensity, especially doing it DIY without a massive crew or major label support, is that it takes an immense toll.
Right. A grenade eventually has to explode. The intense burn of a noise rock band almost always comes with a strict expiration date.
They just can't sustain it forever.
Exactly. So they return home later in 1999, and the decision is made to call it quits. They play their final local shows in Hobart, returning to the very rooms where it all started.
That's fitting.
And then they wrap up the entire Sea Scouts journey with a grand final show at Melbourne's Corner Hotel on February 18th, 2000.
A literal end of the millennium closing of the book.
But the truth is, the story of Sea Scouts does not end on that stage at the Corner Hotel. Because Sea Scouts weren't a dynasty, they were a grenade. They went off, and the shrapnel hit everything the Australian underground for the next 2 decades.
Oh, the diaspora is incredible.
It is. When you trace the DNA of this band through the projects these members formed afterward, it totally redefines how we measure success. Take Tim Evans, for example. He moves to Melbourne and forms a band called Bird Blobs, releasing an EP and 2 albums.
Right.
Then he takes that raw energy to New York City, forming the bands Degreaser and Bogan Dust. He drops a solo album in 2016 called Wretched Wings. He even does a stint on vocals for the legendary noise band Venom P. Stinger.
He essentially carried the Hobart blueprint across the world, and the other members took that chaotic training and applied it in entirely new directions too.
Yeah, tell me about Alex Pope.
Well, look at the bassist, Alex Pope. He takes the abrasive, relentless energy of Sea Scouts and applies it to a completely different extreme genre. He forms a highly regarded black metal band called Ruins.
Black metal?
Yeah. He took the noise ethos and weaponized it in a new way.
That's brilliant. And Zach von Bomberger goes on to found bands like Go Genre Everything. Monica Fickrell applies her driving, primal rhythms to bands like Love of Diagrams and Baseball.
And this is why we have to look past the idea that a band is only successful if they last for 20 years and sell out stadiums.
Oh, absolutely.
Sea Scouts only existed as an active touring unit for about 6 years. But they functioned like a creative crucible. The intense heat of that collaboration forged these musicians.
They learn how to build something out of nothing.
Right. How to play without a safety net, how to survive the format wars. And then they scattered, populating and influencing an entire underground ecosystem.
And the bonds forged in that crucible are essentially permanent. Because in 2021, over 2 decades after that final show at the Corner Hotel, Tim Evans and Monica Fickrell actually reunited.
Did they really?
Yeah, they formed a brand new band together called the Misanthropes.
I love that. When you have shared that kind of foundational experience, when you have stood on a stage playing complex, brutal noise without even a snare drum to anchor you, you develop a musical shorthand with that person that never really goes away.
It's hardwired into you.
It is.
It's just incredible to trace the footprint of this one short-lived Tasmanian experiment. But as we finish unpacking their history, there's one detail buried in the archives that I cannot stop thinking about.
What is it?
Well, we talked about their transition from polycarbonate to cassette to vinyl to CD. We talked about all their releases. But the records show that in 1999, right before they broke up, Sea Scouts made further studio recordings.
Really?
Yeah. It was a combination of older songs and completely new material. And to this day, those recordings have never been released.
Wow. It's a genuinely haunting thought, isn't it?
It is.
I mean, we live in a digital age where we operate under the assumption that everything's been archived. We assume every thought, every song, every photo is instantly accessible, uploaded to a cloud somewhere, ready to be streamed on demand.
But it isn't. Somewhere out there, sitting in a cardboard box in a closet or buried on an obsolete hard drive, is an entire collection of music from an internationally touring band.
Just weighty.
It has been sitting there, totally unheard, for over 25 years. It forces you to ponder the nature of lost art, you know. It's a potent reminder that not all of our cultural history has been digitized and smoothed out yet.
Some of it is still scabby.
Exactly. Some of it is still scabby, still raw, and still waiting to be discovered. Maybe building that house without a foundation, kicking out the snare drum, and screaming over the noise was all they ever needed to do. But somewhere out there, hidden in the static, is a final masterpiece canvas that no one has ever seen. Thanks so much for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you next time.